Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Tim Begonis. I'm the CMO here at D-Tools. With me is Seth Enos, who's the product manager for System Integrator. And what we're going to show you today are some highlights of the latest version of System Integrator. So if you haven't joined us with a webinar before, it's very simple. We will be presenting, we're going to do some slides, then we're going to do a demo. You can raise your hand. You can look in your system tray on the right for GoToWebinar, and then use the questions box to ask any questions. We will do our best to try and answer questions as we go through the presentation, and then what we will do is we will have time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. If you want to expand the viewing area, go ahead and hit the little arrow at the top of your GoToMeeting control panel, and that will give you more screen area. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the new features and enhancements with the latest version of System Integrator. We are on version 12. We have changed our naming convention to drop the years and really just go with the versions, as we typically now are releasing 3 versions of the software per year. And if you're on our software assurance plan, you will get those versions as they get released. Then Seth will give a high-level run-through of all of the new enhancements and features. And like I mentioned, we will have Q&A at the end of the presentation. But if you do have questions as we're going through the presentation, type them into the questions window, and we will do our best to answer them as we go. Okay, for those of you who may not be familiar with System Integrator, what we have is a solution that really helps you streamline the way you do your project proposals and estimates, combined with system design, engineered drawings, documentation, and rounding out with project management and back office operations. Everything in D-Tools is driven from product data. It is a data-driven solution. We have a comprehensive library of thousands of manufacturer products, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, and the information that we provide helps you get a head start on managing your catalog, the products that you sell and install. And what we do is we provide you with very detailed information such as manufacturer, model number, descriptions, product images, and then we're also tracking install time, so that when you're building a project in our solution, you really only have to worry about building a bill of materials, and as you're adding products and packages to your bill of materials, we're tracking the time, we're adding your labor rates to the price that you're charging for the products, and then we're calculating an installed price. From there, you can generate very professional and accurate looking proposals and client documentation. And then this information is also available to generate engineered drawings. So we integrate with AutoCAD and with Visio, and the information that's in your bill of materials is then available for you to do line diagrams, plan views, elevations, and schematics, and the drawings are all tied directly back to the data. So for an elevation drawing, we're going to use the dimensions of the product that are in the database, and we're going to draw an elevation shape to scale based on those dimensions. For a plan view, you can upload your floor plan into either Visio, or you can take your AutoCAD file in AutoCAD, and you can start to lay out symbols onto the drawing. And those symbols are, again, tied to the product data. So when you drag a speaker out onto the drawing, for example, it's tied to the actual speaker that's in the job. So everything ticks and ties and keeps the information that you have put in at the beginning of the project through the engineered drawings. If you do a schematic drawing, we are connecting the inputs and outputs, so you have a very detailed visual representation of how that system has come together. And through that, you can then generate wire schedules, wire checklists, even generate wire labels for the entire job. So that information then is also available for you to schedule out install tasks and service orders. So you can generate tasks for your team, you can schedule out work orders and send them to your field technicians via our mobile install web application. This will allow them to get their task in the field, start a timer. They can mark items complete. They can take site notes. They can take site images. They can get the client to sign off on the work, and you can even do field related change orders. So if something is asked of your techs in the field, they can take a note of that. They can get the customer to sign off on it, and then when the tasks are finished, that information flows back into the D-Tools project so that you can manage it through to completion. And we have mobile apps such as our mobile quote, which is for scope and budget, and the mobile install app that I just mentioned. Okay, so let's talk about what's in our latest version. So in version 12, we've added a number of features that are really geared to help optimize your workflow. And the three main ones that I'm going to touch on before Seth does the demo. First is workflow management rules. So SI now enables you to create workflow management rules that enable you to basically enforce standards and operating procedures. So you can set actions for anything within a project, and then those actions can trigger an event. So either you can lock something down if, let's say, for example, a salesperson is working on a quote and he sets a margin that is not within company range. You can set an alert to notify management for approval. You could lock that project down until that approval is granted. Or it can also be set for basic things like notifying engineering a project has been approved. Let's notify engineering that it's now time to start the system design. Or it can be something as simple as, making sure that team members need to know that they need to react to something within the project. So these workflow rules can be set on basically any parameter, and it really provides checks and balances that help you make sure that your team is operating in a way that your company has set. Now, partnering with that are notifications, and notifications work to really inform both internal and external team members on specific activities. So, for example, as I mentioned, if there's a salesperson working on a quote that is falling below margin, we can alert management for approval. Conversely, we can just let people know, hey, we won a big job. We just won this project, and you can set the threshold that if a project is over X amount, let's notify both our internal team and maybe management. And these in-app notifications are both in-app as well as can be emailed. So if there's people that aren't necessarily using the software, they can be notified via email. Otherwise, if they are a system integrator user, there's now an area within the application for in-app notifications. And these can be tied to workflow rules to make sure that everybody's on the same page. The third area is calculated items. And this allows certain criteria to be calculated and then applied on either a project or catalog basis. So most likely would be cost and sell pricing can now be calculated. You can set user definitions. So at the most basic level, this allows SI users to calculate a unit cost or sell price of a product or labor item based on some established value in a formula. So for example, this can be used to now calculate labor for the job. So rather than using our phase labor approach or creating a labor SKU, you could now create a formula that says, I would like labor to be 20% of the project total. This can also then be used to generate formulas for, let's say, shipping, or for travel, or for per diems. And it really gives a new level of flexibility so that you can set these calculated items and have new ways to really calculate your project labor. And in addition to that, we have a number of other enhancements. We've made enhancements to change orders, to packages, to mobile install, to pricing. And I'm just going to turn it over to Seth now so he can kind of give you an overview of the new features.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. And again, thank you, Tim, for that introduction to what's new in SI. So everyone, I'm going to jump straight into demo the new features that Tim mentioned, as well as some that were right there towards the bottom. We're going to start off with some of, I don't want to call them the more simple ones, but we'll start off with some of the smaller enhancements that we did. Some are long overdue, some were brand new, just from feedback from our users. We listen when you do give us feedback for feature requests, and we were able, in a very short dev cycle, to put together quite a few enhancements to our product here. So let's start with a mobile install enhancement. This is one that a lot of users are going to get some great benefit from. So first things first, let's go over to the projects view. So here I'm looking at projects, and I'm going to go ahead and move over here to mobile install. And so here we have a project, Bay Area Advertising Group, IT and AV Satellite Office. This is a task that was published out here. So we'll go ahead and find that here in the list. And what I want to show you is that now in SI, you can synchronize down any site images that your technicians have added, as well as any documents that have been added to the task and or service order. I'm showing a task here, but each tasks and service orders are very similar in this respect. Documents can be added here, and documents, for the most part, are published out of SI. In this case, let me just go to the tab here. I published just a task item label, for instance. But there also could be documents that your technicians are adding in the field. They have that option. Up until this point, those anything uploaded here only lived out here in the mobile install interface. They didn't come back down to SI. Same with site images. The only place they really resided are out here. You could view them through a task. You'd have to go into the task to open it, but they didn't really synchronize down and stay with the project folder. And that's what they do now. So if we go ahead back down to SI, I'll go ahead and pull this up. And here on the Files tab, so we've got a project selected here. There's a Files tab. There's a new button here that says Add Mobile Install Documents. So this will go out and look for anything that's been added. So go ahead and click that here. And this is showing me here that there is an image that was added out there, as well as in this case, a report that we published out of here. You don't have to download everything if you don't want to. For instance, if say the task item labels, if you don't need that in the folder, you can certainly uncheck that. You've got your select all, deselect all options here. Here's your filters, but let's just go ahead and add this. And this is downloading those. And those have now been added as part of the project file. There's the JPEG image. There's the PDF of the report that was published earlier. By default and automatically, we create mobile install documents category, as we call them over here. You can reorganize these as you see fit, though. Of course, that's how you manage your file categories. So that's the first enhancement I'm going to show you. So that's pretty cool that all those images now can come down and be viewed by everyone without having to go directly into the task or service order. So the next enhancements I'm going to show you have to do with change orders. So let's go ahead and call up another project here. As you know, or may not know if you're really new to us, we did an overhaul of change orders in our last release, SI 2018. We made some long overdue improvements and great feedback from our clients, to be able to have multiple pending change orders at one time, internal versus external change orders. And as our users have been using it for like the last 2 or 3 months, we've got a lot of feedback from you guys, and we've made some improvements. So the first one I'll show you, let me go ahead and pull this up, is the ability to move items that are on a pending change order to another pending change order, or a new pending change order. It doesn't have to already exist. So for instance, here I have some items that have been added. You can see here the plus sign. These are pending on a change order. That's the indication. In fact, I'll go here and show you that they're pending on change order 1 right now. let's say you've created this change order, possibly presented it to your clients already, and there's discussions back and forth that maybe we want to do part of this, but we're not sure yet on the other part of it. Up until this release, you would have to then go delete the items that were added here, the pending items, and re-add them back to another pending change order. But now you have the ability to simply just reassign them, and that's done via the tools menu or a right click. So let's see, for instance, I'm going to leave the TV here, but I'll take the access control stuff and move it to another pending change order. So under the assign option here, you've always had the top 4 options there, but now we've added change order. And again, you could also do a right click. So now this is just warning about accessories, of course, that they have to go with the parent item. But what this is pulling up now is saying, okay, you want to take these items, you want to put them on a different pending change order. So here's showing my existing pending change orders. I've got an external one, which they're currently associated with, an internal one, which I don't want to add these to. So in this case, I'm going to create a new one, and we'll do change order 3. In this case, we'll leave it as external. We'll save that and hit a select. Now these have been moved over to another pending change order. So that will save you guys a lot of time. So there's that. That one's done. So let's go ahead and save and close this project very quickly. And I'm not going to check it in because I want to work off of that. So here we are. Let's go over to, say, the change order tab. So now I've got here 3 pending change orders. One other option that we added, so here's on an internal change order. Let's go ahead and mark this as approved. So that one is accepted. It's an internal change. As you can see, there's no price on this one. The internal, this is the option that we added here to create the revision or not. Now, when you're doing external change orders, we are still forcing a revision to be created. We think that's good record keeping and accounting. Give us feedback. If you want that option there, we could probably, we could add it to external change orders as well. But for now, we got a lot of feedback from users saying, I have so many internal change orders, guys, I don't need a revision every single time I add wires I forgot, or I do this, something else that's internal. So you have the option here to not create a revision if you would like for internal change orders when you do approve them. So, well, we'll mark it as approved. In this case, I left it checked. Now that's just marked as an approved change order. The other thing that we added for change orders is the ability to delete an approved change order. When we initially released this, we made it pretty rigid. We wanted to keep the model as simple as possible. You approve it, you're not able to then delete that. That's a change that you put in there. If you wanted to back out of that, you'd have to create another change order. Well, that didn't sit well with some of our users. So, of course, they gave us feedback and said, it really would be nice, guys, to be able to back out of a change order. I accidentally approved this, or it's not even accidentally. The client simply changed their mind 10 minutes after approving or the next day. I really just want to be able to back out of that. And so now you have the option on an approved change orders to go ahead and delete that. And what will happen in that case, we're going to automatically remove items that were added, and then we're going to add back items that were removed. Very similar to the old revision way for those longtime users out here, how we used to do things when you could, promote something as a project or, do a partial promotion. We've now added that functionality here to change orders. So that should save you a lot of grief if, again, you accidentally approve one or your client simply changes their mind and you do want to back out of that. The one little catch here, if you don't mind me geeking out a little bit, would be component IDs on that. If we are adding back an item to a project from a deleted approved change order, and that component ID that it previously had is currently in use in that project, which very well could happen, especially with wires, we'll simply add a new component ID to that. We're not going to have conflicts like that or make you change the existing item that now has its component ID. Anyways, you'll see all that when you start playing with that functionality and moving through that. So those are our change order enhancements that we've made in this particular release. Let me show you a few more other small ones. When I say small, they're still really cool. Don't get me wrong. And then we'll move on to those the bigger features that Tim was mentioning. So I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit. Here, Tim mentioned this. There's a new validation error here that we had a lot of requests for. And as this one, let me show you. It says the price exceeds the MSRP. That used to not be a check. Now here, if you look at item validation settings, if the price exceeds MSRP, if the MSRP is greater than 0, mind you. I know a lot of you don't use the MSRP field because it really is just a placeholder in our software. Others of you do. use that and rely on that to calculate your cost or your price. So as long as you've set it to something other than null, essentially, and your price exceeds that MSRP, we'll give you a warning. It doesn't stop you from doing anything. You can sell above MSRP as far as we're concerned, but it at least gives you a warning there. I know a lot of you wanted that in here. So again, we added that right there. Okay, another thing that we added here are for packages. Let's see if I can find something in here. Here's a package right now. Let's go here to tools. So packages here. If an item is in a package that's been added to a job, but now you want to move it outside of the package for some reason. It could be that you want to move it to a different location, but you don't want to move or set separate locations and systems on a particular package. There could be many reasons why, oh, it wasn't a package, but now I want to pull that out of the package. We used to not have a function for that. Now we do. It's part of the convert here that we've had for a few releases now, which I think are great features. The accessories features, converting an item to an accessory or from an accessory to a regular item. Now package items can be put down as we'll call them standalone items. It lets you break up a package on the fly. That used to be a matter of deleting something, then re-adding it, which means if you delete it, it takes it off your drawings. You have to go redraw it. This will be a huge time saver for people that need to split packages up. So there's that. Let's see here. Location hierarchy. That's another thing that we enhanced here. It seems simple, but presentation is one of the biggest things with our software. You want to present professionally, and one of the major groupings is location. You want to present by a particular location. And let's say you started a project for the main building and built that out, and you wanted to add another building perhaps, or you wanted to change the hierarchy that you've already established in this list here. You used to not be able to do that too easily. Now you can. There's a promote and demote button here. So you still have the move up and down option, but for instance, this equipment room, let's say that's actually inside of the office. I didn't set it up initially as a sub of the office. And again, historically, you wouldn't be able to change that very easily here on the fly. You'd have to go add it, then reassign all the items. But now, you know, I could just do it like this if I wanted to, put it down in the list where I want it, and I can demote that very easily, and it will just add it as a third level at this point. Same works for promoting if you want to back out of something. So really nice features. It keeps you from being locked into that initial location list, which we realize over time a lot of people do change. So there's that enhancement as well. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some of the bigger features that Tim mentioned. We're going to look at calculated items, but one other little feature first as I'm heading out there. Let me minimize this very quickly. And we're going to go ahead and go over here to the catalog to manage products. I'm just going to pick a particular product, just show you something that we added here for people that are doing purchasing through the software, with purchase orders. There's now a do not order field here. Just a little Boolean value, true or false, checkbox. But by default, anything that is marked as do not order will not show up on your purchase order reports, and they will not show up in the list as you're adding to purchase orders. You can, of course, choose to show those if you happen to be ordering them at that point in time, but by default, they'll just be left out of the list. That way, there's a lot of items that you may keep in stock or that you know already exist. You can always mark them as do not order, just again to save you some time. Rather than using up one of your custom fields for that, we've added that feature for you. Okay, so calculated items, big deal here. And we're calling them items because they can be products or they can be labor items, the two of the major entities in our software. The other third one being packages, of course. So a product, of course, is equipment. Then you've got your labor items, how most of you charge for programming labor or any additional labor besides phase labor. You can now create items. Now, you're not going to be able to change existing items into a calculated one. It's going to be for only new items. And when you create a new item out here on the price tab, you're just going to see two differences. Right now, this looks just like a regular price tab, except for these two radio buttons up here. But you see the fields here that you've always had. That's what we're going to be calling moving forward our standard pricing, which is where you set a cost and a price, or multiple, depending on your price level. And that's it. We've set it. It costs me this, I sell it for this. Done. Flat pricing. Or there's the calculated option here, which you're going to see is quite a bit of options in here. And I'm going to go ahead and build one of these for you. I'm just not going to make it a product. I'm going to go with the example that Tim put forth earlier, where we're going to charge labor for an entire project based off of calculations from within that project. So bear with me just while I move over to my labor. Catalog, manage labor. Same thing though, and again, kind of did that on purpose to show you that it can be done for both of these. If we're creating a new one, for instance, I'm going to go ahead and create this one here. We're going to call this project install labor, and category just labor will be fine. Description, if you want to add one, I'm going to skip that for now and go straight to the price tab. So again, this price tab looks, the standard is just like a standard labor item, so you can see here, or we're going to do calculated like I mentioned for this example. So what I want to do here is I'll talk through some of the fields here for you, then I'm going to set this up. There's an option to recalculate automatically, and that's, of course, once it's been added to a project, meaning if I'm calculating off the entire project's, say, price, as I add items, these items will recalculate. I'm adding another item, it adds $1,000 to the project, this needs to recalculate. You may or may not want that. You may want to capture a spot in time for a particular value, so you don't have to recalculate automatically if you choose not to. You will have use cases for that. Items can always manually be recalculated in a project too, so don't worry about that. Once they get added, there's a little recalculate tab if you don't have this checked. Let's take a little bit further look here. There's the unit cost section, and then there's a unit price section over here. And again, this is a labor item. So here, you can use totals from the project. Now again, we're not in a project. We're out here in the catalog. And I don't know if anybody noticed that. That's I didn't quite explicitly state that, but that's kind of a big deal because some of you may be thinking, oh, I've been using miscellaneous items in projects for a while. Sounds similar to these. You can calculate off of miscellaneous items. Well, miscellaneous items have a few limitations. One, they cannot be stored globally. There is no place in our catalog for those. They are built on a per project basis. So you have to build them every single time. These you don't. You can build them ahead of time and reuse them as much as you want. You can put these in project templates that you create. Very nice feature there because they are being saved globally in our catalog. So really cool feature there. The other option is these can be taxed. Miscellaneous items cannot be taxed. They've never been able to be taxed. They probably never will with the way we built our model. So these can now step in their place as well. So side note there, but here you can calculate based off of project totals and even custom fields, because project custom fields 6 through 8 are numbers. You may have a custom number that you want to throw in here, some decimal that you've calculated down to the last penny of how much this labor should cost me. Wonderful. Fill that in here, part of your formula. Or you could base the cost off of whatever this calculates to, the unit price. And that's what I'm going to do in this case. I'm just going to say, whatever this comes out to, let's do a discount percent of 35%, as you can see here. Notice down here the formula displays, right? Okay, so now I want to be able to calculate my unit price, and then you'll see these actions light up. Once you pick a total, in this case, I'm going to say the total product price, not cost, price. So this is whatever I'm selling the products for, okay, in the entire project. Or if you don't want to do it for an entire project, look at these nice filters down here. I could do it for a current location, which means whatever location I put this item into within a project, it will calculate just for that location. Or maybe you want it for just a system, or just whatever phase you've assigned this item. I want a calculation just for my rough-in phase. And then here's also the assigned change order that will happen on approved projects. We wanted to give you as much flexibility here as possible. So if you don't use these filters, it's basically everything in the job here. Or it's the product price for the current location if you happen to use one of these filters or multiple of these filters. So anyways, I wanted to point that out here since it only lights up when you do choose a total, and I didn't do that in the cost. And I'm going to do a multiply percentage of 50%. So, and again, my formula shows up. Take the unit price. My unit price for this is going to be the total product price times 50%. So that's my example here, and I'm going to go ahead and add this to a project now. So we'll save this, and let me just show you. When I reopen this, if I go to the price tab, these are grayed out now. You only get that option when you're creating these. Now, if you have some existing items that you really would like to change into, ones you don't want to re-enter all the information, you want to make it into a calculated item, you can always use the clone function. That's essentially like adding a new one, just with some things filled in, and then you would be able to choose your pricing on a cloned item. We did put that feature in there for you. So now that I've created this, it's here sitting in the catalog, but it will do you the most good once you add it to a project when it actually calculates something. So I've got another project here open. And just to be proper, since I didn't originally set up this project to charge labor as a whole, I had it set up originally to be phase-based. I've now chosen to ignore labor calcs and all the phases, as you can see here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this open again. I know I could have done this earlier, but oh well. I'm going to do a new location, and I'm simply going to call it labor. I want it to be organized that way. And same here. I want a system called labor. That's how I would usually approach something like this anyways. I don't like things unassigned. So labor, and let's pull out the labor here. And as you can see, I've got a project install labor item here. Let me refresh that list actually. So I just created that project install labor. I'm going to drag it into the project, and it's been added. It's down here at the bottom, organized in my labor quote unquote location. And notice it has its own little color here. You can change that in your application settings. We made it whatever color that is. I can't really tell if that's pink or what, but that indicates a calculated item. There's also fields for that you can see. But let me go ahead and open this up and show you what this looks like now. Now it looks a little bit different because it has a cost, it has a price, a margin and a markup based off of those because it was calculated. So that's all we're really going to show you inside of a project for items like this. But if you want to change the calculation, you can. You can come here and adjust this as needed. Mine was set to recalculate automatically. If it's not, as I mentioned, we'll add a little recalculate tab there where you can manually do that. So you have the option of changing this on the fly. They are very flexible items, these calculated items. So I hope that was a good example for you and everybody followed along with that. And I'm going to move on to the next major feature that we have here, which is workflow rules and notifications, kind of a mixture of those. So let's talk about those. There's a lot to talk about with them. I'm going to minimize this project for right now, and I'm going to take you over to your control panel. This is where you're going to build workflow rules. So let me scroll up a little bit. Here at the very top, there is workflow rules. Brand new setting. I'm going to open this up, and you can see I've created quite a few of these already for this demonstration here. And these are what we'll call the entities. We actually use that word in the software. I didn't have anything better come to mind for that. But the entities that these rules can apply to. The major items in our software: projects, purchase orders, tasks, and service orders. Those are the big, as I call them, entities or modules in the software, and these being the entities of those modules. So a project is the most complex rule because there's many more fields in a project than there are in these other items. But you can see we did do some icons here to indicate what's what. I'm going to go ahead and open this one. Well, I can also show you create a new one, but here's one I created already. I double-click this, and as you can see, the entity is a project. You just choose that first off. You get to choose when this gets executed on. When a project is created, deleted, or updated. Update being the one that will give you the most flexibility for fields down here for criteria. There's also lock, unlock, lock reports, unlock reports. I will have to come back and revisit those in a second with you under actions, but that's also a new feature in the software as well, which is can be used separately from these. You guys now have the ability to lock any entity you want in the software if you have permission to do so, or lock reports on any entity in the software manually. You can just go do it manually, or they can be triggered. Those locks can be triggered from one of these rules. Optional, but you can do it. So here, in this example, there's an update. I've called this one over budget. And then for the criteria, you can see down here, there's quite a few criteria for projects. The only one I chose on this one was over budget, which means if my budget field exceeds, or if the project price, I should say, exceeds the budget field that I've set, do something. And what does that mean? Do something. Either notify some people and or lock something, either the entity itself or the projects. And I say and or a lot in this demo because you have choices. You don't have to do one or the other. It's up to you. You could, set a rule that just notifies people and doesn't lock items. But in this case, what I've done is I basically said, if this criteria is met, if it's over budget, I want to notify certain users. You hit add, you'll see all of your users. Down here, you could add additional emails if you want to. They may be a non-SI user. Let's send them an email. And if you'd like to put a message in the email, you could do that here as well. Technically, these could be sent outside your organization. It's an email address. So then maybe you might want a message to your client. I'm sure you guys will find tons of use cases to do that. Now, there's also some presets up here. We can talk about notify the assigned to user, notify all resources, or notice this one, notify resources on the project with roles of something. The roles come into play here now. For a while, these have always just been designations. There's no permissions around these. That's a whole other thing in the software, but those are called user groups. The user roles have always just been historically for reporting purposes. You could throw in who the technicians were, who the project manager was, or it's just lookups when you're looking at projects. But now you could notify all resources for a project that, say, were assigned a technician. I want every technician to be notified. They would, as long as they were assigned to that project. So that's your notify section. And then there's actions. Now, every entity, those again being project purchase orders, tasks, or service orders, these are the only two things that you can do. You can either lock that entity or you can lock that entity's reports. And that simply means you can't run reports. I don't want you sending out a proposal that has a 5% profit margin on it. Don't do that. It's going to lock it if you hit that criteria, and then someone with permission is going to have to go unlock that. So I've talked about a lot here with these, but basically, you choose an entity, you choose an action that you want to be notified on or do something on, lock something, and then you can choose your criteria, which is down here. If you pick something like cost, for instance, just so you know, we have all these different operators in here, so you can set that, of course, margin, less than or equal to a certain margin, notify somebody. And I'm sure after we'll get more ideas for things on these, but as you see, there's a lot in here for a project specifically, and that list is a little bit smaller, mind you, for other entities for purchase orders. But that, or in a nutshell, our workflow rules. Let me open one of these so you can see. This is a service order one. You can see that the list for criteria is a little bit smaller here in this case. And on create or delete, we really only give you two criteria. Do you want to, which user did it or which user with a specific role did it? Then either notify or lock something. So I'm sure you guys are going to have a really fun time playing with these and setting these up and locking people's projects and whatnot. And remember, the locking and unlocking of projects, or I should say entities and entity reports, that's all controlled via your user group settings. You don't have to give everybody permission to do that. You'll see all those new settings out there. But again, so what happens when a rule is triggered? Well, you're notified. There's the notification. If you notice up here, I have notifications sitting up here in this list, and this shows one. As of right now, I'm going to click that in just a second, but let me go ahead and move over. Let's go back to projects for here. Okay, so let's click this. I have a notification that I haven't looked at apparently. Now, if you receive a notification, by the way, when you're not logged in to SI and you're an SI user that's been notified, as soon as you log in, you're going to get a prompt that says you have X amount of unread messages, and then you'll know to come up here and click this. This lists your notifications here. You can see the one in bold is the one that I haven't looked at yet. A purchase order was created. So obviously I am in the list of people to notify if a PO is created, and that's what's happened here. Once you click this, that is considered viewed. Real simple. The one goes away. Now, notifications are pretty much real time. I mean, it takes a few seconds to run, but yeah, they're real time. But the notification up here where it shows you the number, that you get to set a timer under your application settings. The default is refresh that every 5 minutes. If you want it longer than that or shorter, you can do that. You can set that out under your application settings. Like look every minute to see if I have a notification. It's up to you. Here's a locked project and a project that has locked reports. This one is just a locked project. That's what these icons indicate. And you'll see that all throughout the software, your tasks, your service orders, your purchase orders, the entities, as I called them earlier, and will continue to call them for lack of a better word. Those things can be locked and the reports can be locked. Now, the unlock option, little simple tool here. It's also a right click. Here's where I can unlock that project. I have permission to do this, so let me do that. Now, very cool thing about when you are unlocking a project is we go and scan and look for other rules that may apply to this. And you could choose if you want to ignore that or other rules, meaning, okay, I told it to trigger when it's over budget. Well, a manager looked at that and said, okay, that's cool on this job. I've talked to the client. We're going to be able to go a little over budget. I'm going to say the user forgets to update that budget field. The next time they check in that project, that project could potentially lock again on them, requiring another unlock. So you do get to ignore any future ones when you are unlocking these and say, I've given the approval. I'm going to let them run with this. Don't bug me again if that one's over budget. You could check it, hit yes. Or you could say, no, trigger my rules every time. And so it's up to you, but that's another little feature we threw in there for where you are unlocking these. So I'm going to go hit yes just to unlock it, and now it is unlocked. And again, you'll see these tools throughout. You can also unlock when you're in a project too, because under notifications, there is an open option to open the entity like a project, and within a project like this one, somewhere along here, there we go, project, I could lock and unlock here as well. We put that out here under your tools while you're viewing and reviewing a project. So this particular project is the bar and grill in my list, so I shouldn't be locked. Where am I? There it is, bar and grill. I'm going to go ahead and save and check this in. I think it should trigger a rule if I've done this right. It should be over budget, especially now that I've added that labor item in there. And I'm going to save and close this and check it in, and I'm locked. I went over budget. Now, notice again, I didn't get this little notification yet. I've set to update every 5 minutes, but if I click it, it's there. It's there. It's over budget. Project price exceeds budget by $80,000. So, yeah, that's going to be a discussion. So that's locked now. I can't run reports of that. I need to, hopefully someone has been notified that can unlock this for me after a conversation. So there's that. I also receive emails for this. Emails just come out automatically. Now, you as a user can decide if you want to turn off email notifications. You can't decide if you want to turn off these notifications. You know, a manager, they make that decision. You're going to get notified. But if the emails bother you, here's my user. Do not send workflow rule email notifications. There's a little setting there. Say, don't crowd my inbox. I'm going to see it in the app when I get there. Or if you're like me, I like emails on everything. Anything that happens or changes I want to know about, send me an email. And I never clean out my inbox. So yeah, there's that. All right, so there we have the new features to show you. And I've showed you how to unlock, how you can actually manually lock. So again, you could treat that as a separate feature. You may not want to use workflow rules and just manually have the ability to lock and unlock projects. Wonderful, go ahead. Or you could, again, use workflow notifications just to notify people when the status, hey, we've sold the job, so it goes to accounting, and please go ahead and start billing the client for this, or get that estimate over to QuickBooks. So lots of potential here. I hope everyone has fun with these new features. We put a lot of work into these. We're looking forward to your feedback once you update to V12. And yeah,